Science proves that ejaculating more often reduces your risk of cancer. Have you ever wondered if your body's natural urges could actually be protecting you? Not just from stress or tension, but from something much more serious, like cancer. For years, men over 60 have been told to watch their diet, get screened, take their medications. But almost no one talks about what happens in private about ejaculation and whether it might have real health benefits. It's a quiet question, one rarely asked out loud, but now, science is finally weighing in. Dr. Rena Malik, a respected urologist, breaks down the evidence from one of the largest studies ever conducted on men's health. What researchers found might shock you. Men who ejaculated more often had a lower risk of developing prostate cancer. So, could something so natural really be protective? Let's look at the research, the biology, and the reality behind a question most men never dare to ask but deeply deserve to understand. So why does this question matter now more than ever? Because prostate cancer isn't rare. It's not a distant statistic. It's personal. 1 in every 8 men in the United States will be diagnosed with it during their lifetime. That's not a scare tactic. That's reality. And for men over 60, the odds grow higher each year. But here's the real issue. Many of those men don't see it coming. Unlike more obvious cancers, prostate cancer is often slow, quiet, and symptomless until it isn't. For some, it stays localized and manageable. For others, it spreads quickly. It disrupts everything: sleep, intimacy, energy, even identity. And in many cases, by the time it's caught, it's already complicated. That's why prevention matters, not just treatment, because if there are any natural behaviors, simple habits, or everyday choices that could quietly tip the scale in your favor, wouldn't you want to know? Yet, here's the challenge. Men don't talk about it. Not really. We talk about blood pressure. We talk about back pain. We might even talk about erectile dysfunction if we trust our doctor enough. But ejaculation, that feels off limits. Even though it's a natural biological function, one that many men still experience well into their 70s, it's loaded with cultural shame, silence, and embarrassment. And that silence costs us. It means men hesitate to ask honest questions. They delay getting answers. They ignore early warning signs. And sometimes, they miss out on low-risk, high-impact information like what we're talking about today. This is not about promoting sexual activity for the sake of performance. It's about understanding the whole man, his biology, his fears, his rhythms, and how they all connect to real health outcomes. So if talking about this feels uncomfortable, you're not alone. But maybe discomfort is a sign we're finally getting closer to something important. Because sometimes, it's the questions we avoid that hold the most powerful answers. So what exactly is the link? How could something like ejaculation, a deeply personal and seemingly unrelated act, possibly have an effect on prostate cancer? Well, scientists have proposed several theories. These aren't just guesses. They're grounded in decades of anatomical, hormonal, and biochemical understanding of how the male reproductive system works. While no theory offers the full picture alone, taken together, they reveal something surprisingly logical. Let's walk through the 3 most commonly cited explanations. Theory number 1: prostate fluid stagnation. Think of your prostate like a sponge, soft, flexible, and full of channels. Its job is to produce and store the fluid that carries sperm. That fluid is rich in enzymes, proteins, minerals like zinc, and substances designed to protect and nourish. Now imagine what happens when that sponge isn't squeezed very often. Without regular release, those fluids can linger. Over time, some researchers believe that this stagnation may allow tiny irritants, possibly even carcinogenic compounds, to build up. In other words, the prostate becomes a holding tank for waste that was meant to be flushed out. It's a bit like a water tank that hasn't been drained in weeks. The water may have started out clean, but without movement or renewal, bacteria and byproducts begin to accumulate. Stale fluid becomes a breeding ground for inflammation. Frequent ejaculation, according to this theory, acts like a rinse cycle. It helps keep things moving. It clears out the old fluid and stimulates the prostate to produce fresh, clean secretions. over time, that could reduce the risk of chronic irritation, one of the key conditions that can quietly fuel the development of cancer cells. Theory number 2. Stress reduction and hormonal balance. Here's something you might not expect. Stress doesn't just affect your mind. It has a powerful impact on your immune system, your inflammation levels, and your hormonal regulation. When your body is under stress, especially chronic stress, it releases cortisol. And while cortisol has its purpose, elevated levels over time can suppress your immune function and increase inflammation throughout the body, including in the prostate. Ejaculation, on the other hand, activates the body's relaxation response. After climax, the brain releases dopamine and oxytocin neurochemicals associated with satisfaction, bonding, and calm. These chemicals counteract cortisol and help the body shift into a parasympathetic state, rest, digest, and repair. For men who struggle with chronic tension, overwork, or emotional suppression, this kind of hormonal shift can make a difference. It's not just about pleasure, it's about recalibrating your entire internal chemistry toward balance. That balance may help your body maintain better immune surveillance, spotting abnormal cells early and keeping inflammation under control. Both are crucial when it comes to preventing cancer from taking root and spreading. Theory number 3. Metabolic and microbial balance. The third theory dives even deeper into the microscopic world inside your prostate. This small gland relies on certain substances like zinc and citrate to function properly. These compounds help regulate its secretions, defend against bacterial overgrowth, and maintain the correct pH environment. And guess what? These levels are closely tied to how often the prostate is emptied. If the gland goes too long without releasing its fluid, it may begin to accumulate waste, lose microbial balance, or disrupt its internal chemistry. Over time, this can alter the function of immune cells within the gland and promote chronic, low-grade inflammation. Some scientists believe this is especially important in older men. As we age, our ability to maintain stable internal environments becomes more fragile. That's why even small disruptions like infrequent ejaculation might have a bigger impact on prostate health after 50 than they did at 25. Think of the prostate like a garden. It needs regular tending. Without that, weeds grow, the soil changes, and imbalance takes over. Regular ejaculation, according to this theory, is one of the simplest ways to maintain that internal ecosystem. These three theories don't compete with each other, they build on each other. Physical drainage, hormonal reset, and chemical balance. It's a triangle of protection, formed not by medication or surgery, but by a natural function of the male body. But what does the science actually show? Let's look at the landmark study that brought this question into the spotlight. The theories are compelling, but what about the proof? What about hard data? In 2016, a group of researchers from Harvard University published one of the most comprehensive studies ever done on ejaculation frequency and prostate cancer. It wasn't a quick lab test. It was a 20-year-long prospective study involving more than 31,000 men. The kind of research that builds credibility over time, not headlines overnight. It started back in 1992, when researchers asked men in their 20s, 30s, and 40s to report how often they ejaculated each month. They followed these men for decades, recording their health changes, lifestyle factors, and most importantly, any diagnosis of prostate cancer. What they found was both surprising and remarkably consistent. Men who reported ejaculating 21 times or more per month, especially during their 20s and 40s, had a 19% to 22% lower risk of developing prostate cancer compared to those who ejaculated only 4 to 7 times per month. Think about that for a moment. A nearly 1 in 5 reduction in risk, just from a behavior that is already natural and accessible to most men. This wasn't just a fluke. The researchers controlled for a wide range of other factors: diet, alcohol use, smoking, exercise, BMI, even access to health care. The association between higher ejaculation frequency and lower prostate cancer risk persisted. But here's something important. The benefit was most pronounced for low-grade, non-aggressive forms of prostate cancer, the kind that tends to grow slowly, often without symptoms. This type is also the most commonly diagnosed form in older men. So while ejaculation may not protect against the most dangerous or fast-growing cancers, it may help prevent the cancers most likely to sneak up on you over time, and that's not insignificant. Now, some critics pointed out that the study is observational. That's true. It means the researchers noticed patterns, but they couldn't prove direct cause and effect. Maybe men who ejaculate more also tend to live healthier lives overall. Maybe they're more active, less stressed, better nourished. But even when the data was adjusted for those factors, the link remained strong. And when you place that data alongside the biological theories, the flushing of fluid, the hormonal regulation, the chemical balance inside the prostate, the picture becomes clearer. Not definitive, but certainly worth paying attention to. It's also worth noting that this kind of study is extremely difficult to replicate. You need decades, tens of thousands of participants, and honest self-reporting about a deeply personal habit. That's not easy to design or fund. So the fact that this study exists at all is part of what makes it so powerful. Here's the takeaway. This isn't some internet myth or bedroom folklore. It's science carefully tracked, statistically analyzed, and peer-reviewed. And it adds weight to a question men have quietly wondered about for years. But now that we've seen what the research says, a new question arises. How does this apply in real life, especially as men age and things begin to change? Let's explore how ejaculation patterns shift with age and what that means for your body today. Now that we know the science, let's bring it back to real life, because here's the truth. What's possible or even natural in your 20s often feels very different in your 50s, 60s, or 70s, and that matters. In the same Harvard study, researchers found a steep decline in ejaculation frequency as men aged. During their 20s, more than 57% of men reported ejaculating at least 13 times per month. But by their 40s, that number dropped to just 32%, and it continued declining into the later decades. This isn't just about desire, it's about biology. Testosterone levels fall gradually over time, energy shifts, stress levels change. Health conditions, medications, emotional connection, even body image, all of these can influence how often a man feels drawn to sexual activity. And yet, many men silently judge themselves. They feel pressure whether from their younger memories, media messages, or even misleading health advice to maintain a number, as if 21 times a month is a benchmark of masculinity or longevity. Let's be clear. That's not the point of this video. The goal isn't to hit a number. The goal is to understand your body as it is today and make choices that support its health without shame or fear. For some men, frequent ejaculation remains part of a healthy rhythm well into their 70s. For others, intimacy may take new forms or slow down naturally. Both are valid. What matters is that you don't suppress your body's signals out of guilt, embarrassment, or outdated beliefs. Instead of striving for a fixed target, think of ejaculation as one tool among many that may support your prostate health. Not a requirement, not a duty, but a potential ally. And if you notice a change in your pattern, whether it's more, less, or different, take it as an invitation to check in, not to panic. You're not failing. You're adapting. And that's something your body is very good at, especially when you meet it with kindness instead of pressure. So if you're still active in this way, that's wonderful. And if you're not, that's okay too. Your health is not defined by a number, it's defined by awareness, compassion, and care. And that brings us to one of the most overlooked parts of this conversation, the emotional side of sexuality and the quiet shame many men have carried for decades. Let's talk about that next. So far, we've talked biology, research, and risk. But now it's time to talk about something just as important and often ignored. How we feel about all this. Because for many men, ejaculation isn't just physical, it's emotional, it's personal, and too often, it's wrapped in quiet shame. Maybe you were raised in a family or faith tradition where sexual expression, especially solo pleasure, was seen as dirty, weak, or selfish. Maybe somewhere along the way, you internalized the idea that desire fades with age, and that if it doesn't, something must be wrong with you. So even if your body still wants release, your mind might push it down, ignore it, label it as unnecessary or embarrassing, and little by little, that emotional weight begins to affect not just your mindset, but your health. The truth is, shame is stressful, and chronic stress impacts hormones, blood flow, and immune function, including how your prostate responds and repairs itself. When we deny or suppress healthy urges, we don't protect ourselves, we strain ourselves. Let's flip the script. What if ejaculation when it feels right for you isn't something to hide or apologize for? What if it's simply one way your body regulates itself, releases pressure, restores chemical balance, and even supports healing? That doesn't mean it has to be frequent or follow any schedule. It just means giving yourself permission to respond to your own rhythm without guilt. Because your body doesn't work on shame, it works on signals. And when those signals are silenced, confusion follows. So let this be your reminder. Pleasure isn't a sign of weakness. Connection to yourself, to your partner, to your physical self is not something you grow out of. It's something you carry, reshape, and re-honor over time. And in that process, there's strength, there's health, and maybe even protection. So, where does all this leave us? You've heard the theories, you've seen the research, you've reflected on your own experience, but the question still stands: what are you actually supposed to do with this information? Let's begin with what not to do. Don't treat this as a medical prescription to ejaculate 21 times a month. That number came from a study, not from your doctor, and not from your body. Trying to force frequency without desire, energy, or comfort may do more harm than good. It creates pressure, not health. What you can do is much simpler and far more effective. Start by staying aware. Listen to your body. Notice changes in desire, sensation, comfort, or rhythm. None of these are random. They're messages. If you still feel drawn to ejaculation, whether through intimacy or solo pleasure, know that it's not something to hide or outgrow. In fact, it may be one way your body is maintaining balance. If you've gone months or years without it, and that feels natural to you, there's nothing wrong with that either. But don't suppress the topic entirely. Discuss it with your doctor, especially if you notice pain, discomfort, or new urinary symptoms. These could be signs of prostate inflammation, not aging. The point is this: ejaculation is one small part of a much bigger picture. It's not a miracle habit or a magical shield, but it's also not meaningless. In the context of a healthy lifestyle, good sleep, movement, hydration, fiber, connection, it might be an unexpected ally, a quiet act of care that your body still responds to, even after 60. So instead of chasing a number, chase awareness. Respond with honesty, move with kindness, because your prostate doesn't need pressure, it needs partnership. So after all of this, after the theories, the science, the questions, the honesty, what's left? A quiet reflection, not on how often you ejaculate, not on whether you're above or below some invisible benchmark, but on how well you've stayed connected to your own body. Because this isn't really a video about sex, it's a video about health, about permission, about reclaiming something that, for many men, has felt confusing, awkward, or even shameful with age. What the research shows is hopeful but subtle. Ejaculation, when it's part of a healthy rhythm, may reduce the risk of low-grade prostate cancer. It may help balance hormones, reduce inflammation, and support chemical health inside the gland. But what the research can't show is how powerful it is when a man over 60 finally gives himself permission to care for his body without judgment, to ask questions, to listen inward, to let go of shame and replace it with understanding. You are not broken. You are not past that part of life. You are living in a body that still responds, still adjusts, still heals. Maybe not the way it did at 25, but often in wiser, more sustainable ways. So tonight, or sometime this week, ask yourself not how often, but how open. Are you open to listening to your body again? Open to honoring what it wants, without shame? Because that's where healing begins. And if this video gave you something to think about, please consider subscribing, not out of obligation, but so that others like you, good men, aging with questions, can find clarity too. Drop a comment below. Did this shift how you think about prostate health? Or even more important, did it shift how you think about yourself? Thank you for spending this time here. Thank you for your honesty, your curiosity, and your quiet courage. You still matter. Your body still matters. And the best, truly, may still be ahead.